Welcome everyone to my Ye Shunguang kit overview. Ye Shunguang is the newest and second official Void Hunter, who will of course come with some glamour in her kit. In this kit overview, I'll go over Ye Shunguang's kit and explain what she does, then go over her signature W engine, possible build options, and teams. Keep in mind that information in this video is not official and therefore highly subject to change, especially this early on. And without further ado, Ye Shunguang is an S-rank Honed Edge attack agent from the Yunkwei Summit faction. Her core skill enhancement bonus will increase her base attack and crit rate, as is the case with the other Void Hunter and Void Hunter level agents. Ye Shunguang comes with a special attribute type, Honed Edge. Honed Edge is essentially the same as the physical attribute, as it is affected by the same damage bonuses and resistances. However, Honed Edge has its own attribute anomaly buildup, separate from the physical attribute anomaly buildup, but it still triggers the same assault and flinch effects. The same situation as Yishuan's Auric Ink and Miyabi's Frost attribute, Ye Shunguang is an attack agent who deals most of her damage by entering a special stance, which is called the Sword Stance. During this stance, Ye Shunguang activates an ether veil called Evil Slayer, which is a different ether veil than the one Yidari or Lucia activate. During the duration of this ether veil, the enemies will be inflicted with the veil vulnerability, in which the enemy's stun damage multiplier will increase Ye Shunguang's damage regardless of whether the enemy is stunned or not, which is similar to how Trigger's stun damage multiplier applies even if the enemy is not stunned. Ye Shunguang can enter the Sword Stance by using either her ultimate or her intro skill, which relies on using her main resource, which is the Sword Will points. Sword Will points can be gained by just using her various attacks. Her X special can specifically grant her 1 Sword Will point, and her faction bonus, which requires either a support or defense agent, will grant her 3 points if a squad member activates or extends an ether veil. Up to 6 Sword Will points can be granted, but you can additionally store up to 3 points to use in your next rotation, giving you a small head start. Upon having 6 Sword Will points, switching into Ye Shunguang or holding her basic attack can allow her to enter the Sword Stance. It is important to note that using either her ultimate or intro skill will not consume Sword Will points. Instead, Sword Will points will be consumed to use her attacks during the Sword Stance. Having 6 points is what allows you to use Ye Shunguang's intro skill to enter the Sword Stance instead of using her ultimate. Once you use Ye Shunguang's ultimate or intro skill, she will enter the Sword Stance and activate her Ether Veil, and additionally, while on the battlefield, Ye Shunguang gains a bonus 30% crit rate and 25% damage bonus. During the Sword Stance, and more specifically because of Ye Shunguang's Ether Veil, enemies will be applied with the Veil vulnerability, which basically increases damage by applying the stun damage multiplier to Ye Shunguang's attacks, regardless of whether the enemy is stunned. The Veil vulnerability will also stack with regular stun damage multiplier inflicted by agents like Qingyi, Trigger, or Dialyn. During the Sword Stance, you can use either her basic attacks or just hold her X special. Both attacks will be consuming Sword Will points. There are some specific basic attack combos you can pull off during the Sword Stance, but holding her X special will probably be the main way to play her at M0. Holding her X special will continuously deal Honed Edge damage while consuming Sword Will points. During this attack, Ye Shunguang will have some invincibility. This X special will end upon releasing the X special button or just running out of Sword Will points. Running out of Sword Will points will cause Ye Shunguang to exit the Sword Stance and end her Ether Veil. However, just before that happens, you would want to use her second ultimate. This second ultimate can be used anytime during the Sword Stance and does not consume decibel rating. This ultimate will deal damage and end both the Sword Stance and Ether Veil, so you'd usually want to use this ultimate right after consuming your sword will points, and sneak in some extra damage right before ending the sword stance. To sum it all up, Ye Shunguang is a Void Hunter who will expectedly be a strong damage dealer, just like other Void Hunters and Void Hunter level agents. She deals damage by entering a special state. Sword Will is Ye Shunguang's special resource, and is what allows her to deal damage during her special state. To enter sword stance, you can use her ultimate, which also grants 6 sword will points, or use her intro skill, which requires 6 points to use. Upon doing so, you can hold her X special, consuming sword will points. Just before exiting the sword stance by consuming all sword will points, you would want to use her additional ultimate to deal some more damage and exit the sword stance, and that is basically Ye Shunguang's kit. Needless to say, since she is going to be a Void Hunter, Ye Shunguang will probably end up being very strong, just like Miyabi and Yi Xuan, able to easily clear most content, even that which does not align with her attribute or mechanics. Ye Shunguang will also have more invincibility frames than the average agent, which should also make her more comfortable to play. In terms of her squad composition, the fact that Ye Shunguang can apply the stun damage multiplier to her attacks during her sword stance, even if that enemy is not stunned, might make using a stun agent seem like a waste. However, the stun damage multiplier some agents apply will still be counted, so even someone like Qingyi might end up being a very usable option, maybe not so much for her ability to stun an enemy, but more so for her large stun damage multiplier bonus. The best option for the stun agent slot will probably be Dialyn. Dialyn provides many useful buffs, such as a stun damage multiplier increase and a damage bonus, but she also allows you to use a free ultimate, and pretty early on as well. This can allow Ye Shunguang to enter the sword stance early, and more generally, enter the sword stance more often, allowing you to deal more damage. In terms of your last slot, you could go with a general support such as Astra, or maybe even Nicole, Caesar, or Lucy. However, if you do go back to Ye Shunguang's faction bonus, when a squad member activates an Ether Veil, Ye Shunguang will gain 3 sword will points. These 3 additional points may not make or break her playstyle, but having these extra points may make things a little bit easier. This is where Zhao comes in. Zhao is a defense agent who can provide a 1000 attack buff and up to a 40% damage bonus. However, she can also activate an Ether Veil, which will grant Ye Shunguang 3 additional sword will points. You could also go for squads with 2 support/defense agents, such as a team with Astra and Zhao. Additionally, since Ye Shunguang is an attack agent, you could also play her alongside Seed, and with both agents being strong damage dealers, this team might end up as a solid alternative. However, this playstyle will require you to split up time on both agents, and that might make things a slight bit more complicated. In terms of W engines, Ye Shunguang's signature W engine, Cloud Cleave Radiance, will probably end up being her best in slot. This W engine has an increased base attack of 743 and increases crit damage by 48%. As for its effect, damage dealt will ignore 20% of physical resistance. When activating an Ether Veil, damage dealt and crit damage will be both increased by 20% for 40 seconds. In total, this W engine provides up to 68% crit damage, a 20% damage bonus, as well as 20% physical resistance ignore. This W engine will probably be her best in slot. But since Ye Shunguang is essentially a physical damage dealer, there are going to be some alternative options such as A-Rank Starlight Engine and Starlight Engine Replica, the event W engine Marcato Desire for the crit rate, and even Gilded Blossom, which could be very strong as Ye Shunguang will be generally dealing X special damage during the sword stance. S-rank options should also be plenty. You could use some of the many banner exclusive S-rank W engines as crit stat sticks, or even go with standard S-rank options such as the Brimstone or even Steel Cushion, which increases physical damage. Moving on to builds, and starting with drive disc sets. The upcoming Whitewater Ballad set is probably meant for her and should be her best in slot. This set increases physical damage, and being in an Ether Veil will increase crit rate by 12%. Additionally, if the equipping character is an attack agent, activating an Ether Veil will further increase crit rate by 12%, granting a total of 10% physical damage and up to 24% bonus crit rate. As for 2 piece drive disc sets, bonus attack, pen, crit rate, or crit damage will probably be the way to go. And as for main stats, Ye Shunguang will probably want crit rate or damage on the 4th partition, physical damage, pen ratio, or attack on the 5th partition, and lastly an attack 6th partition. Ye Shunguang will be an agent with a lot of starting crit rate, as her core skill enhancement bonus grants up to 14.4% crit rate alongside the base 5%. Her X special grants 30% crit rate and a bonus 24% crit rate if you are using the Whitewater Ballad disc set. This means that Ye Shunguang will already be starting with 73.4% crit rate, and because of that, running a crit damage 4th partition might be the way to go, and generally it looks like crit damage investment will be slightly more preferable. Other stats such as physical damage bonus might also become oversaturated, especially if you're running Dialyn, Zhao, and using her signature W engine. Overall, Ye Shunguang does look pretty interesting, and will probably end up being very strong. However, she may not be necessary to get, as other physical damage dealers already exist, and older agents are still holding up pretty well. And that's all for this kit overview. Thank you for making it till the end, and thank you for watching.